What do you do if you lock up your brakes and the weather seems to be a factor getting into a crash? You hit somebody.
Yeah, I mean, weather is a significant, circumstance when we're dealing with, operating a motor vehicle and try to do it in a safe manner. Legally, what you need to know is that, you need to adjust your driving. And the law requires you to operate your vehicle under a set of rules, the speed limit and, signals, lights, things like that. And that all comes into play, especially when it's really bad weather like this. Simply because the speed limit may be 35 miles an hour doesn't mean it's reasonable to drive at 35 miles an hour when you can't see, when there's rain, when there's fog, that type of situation. The stopping distance is a huge part of what causes wrecks in bad weather. You need to double your stopping distance. You may slide. You may need to be aware that other people may not be paying attention or may not be able to see. And so you need to adjust your driving carefully to adjust to the weather conditions.
How do you prove that it wasn't your fault? I mean, obviously, if you're the one that slams into somebody in front of you and the weather's bad, what do you do? Because, insurance is always looking to see who's at fault here. What do you do? What do police look for to help prove that, hey, you were not, in fact, at fault?
A lot of times it comes down to, what the people that are involved in the wreck have to say, or whether there's any witnesses to the wreck. Police officers do a decent job of trying to put down the facts, but they're not investigators, and it's not their job necessarily to determine who is at fault in a situation. So you need to make sure that if there are witnesses, that you get their name, information, that you can take photographs of the vehicles and the placement of vehicles so that you know where they were on the road. And that's a lot about just trying to protect yourself. Now, if you're injured, sometimes you're not able to do that, and that's why you need to talk to somebody soon after a wreck to make sure that if there's any evidence or witnesses that need to be talked with, that can be done.
All right, thank you so much for that. We do have a caller now. Larry, what's your question? Can you hear us, Larry? Okay, we might have lost Larry. We just had someone there.
Was he there? No. Larry, go ahead. Call us back. 256-536-0077. We'd love to get your question through to Michael, and, of course, anybody else who's out there watching. Go ahead, give us a call right now. We are waiting by those phone lines. Is there special, talking about roads and wrecks, is there special coverage to have with insurance?
Well, there's, the liability coverage is mandatory. The minimum is $25,000 in the state of Alabama. That's typically not enough if you cause any kind of serious damage. So you need to really look at your coverages. The coverages are $25, $50, $100, $250, $500, and $1 million. So you want to make sure that you protect yourself, your family, your assets in the event that something bad happens and that somebody is injured. So that's one of those things you want to look at. The other thing you want to look at is to make sure that you have underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage on your policy that will protect you and your family if you get in a wreck with somebody that doesn't have any insurance or doesn't have enough insurance to take care of your injuries involved in a wreck.
What I'm hearing, unfortunately, is that even though your wreck might have been caused by wet roads and the conditions outside, ultimately, if you do hit a car, you're responsible.
Well, a lot of it depends on the circumstances. If you're following too close, if you're driving too fast for conditions, even if you're within the speed limit, but if it was rainy, you can still be held responsible for that kind of wreck. So the law says you have to operate your vehicle in a reasonable manner, regardless of conditions. So you need to consider the conditions and make sure that you adjust your driving accordingly.
All right, definitely want to listen to that advice this week with all that rain. If you didn't get your answers or your questions answered, remember you can always call our friends over at Timberlake and League.
Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right.